Welcome to the Food Bloggers Table. Pull up a chair for authentic conversations and actionable advice from fellow food bloggers and industry experts. I'm your host, Jen, and I create custom food blogs designed to earn top-tier ad income. Join us now at the table as we break bread and build brands. Tastemaker is the conference that everybody wants to attend. But the question is, how do I know that the investment I make, not just in the conference attendance, but in the airline ticket, the hotel, all the things that are involved, how do I know I'm going to actually get a return on that investment? I think that's a conversation that people want to have, but they're afraid to ask. So we're asking it. What is the ROI for Tastemaker?
That is a large question, but I think Chandice and I have a lot of different insight into not just the ROI, but we've been having this conversation about return on time, your return on
Yes.
experience, which all inform your return on investment, right? We sometimes think that it's all about the money, but remembering that there are various things that inform that. I like to use the example of years ago when I was starting my blog, The Butter Half, and I probably invested that year going to Expo West, going to various other small conferences. I think I probably ended up spending, and this was back in like 2015, 2016, 17, and I spent maybe $2,000 to $2,500. And a few years ago, I wrote a newsletter to everybody explaining how much money that $2,500 turned into for a business. And one of those things was I met Chandice at Expo West, and we started Tastemaker. And Tastemaker is about to cross a seven-figure revenue threshold 7 years later. And so it started with 150 people. And I think our first year we maybe made $150,000. It was very scrappy. I mean, it still is to a lot of ways because we have a lean team. But I think just remembering that you are not just investing in the moment, you're investing in years to come. And I think honestly, it's the relationships you make, the people, the businesses. We've developed those relationships and have taken that feedback and listened to people saying, we want to hear from these people. We want this company there. And Chandice works her booty off to make sure that we get those people there. And that is priceless, right? Talking with your website host and being like, I can't do this thing and it's been tripping me up for 6 months. And they click a button, like that could unlock thousands of dollars of revenue, for
Yes.
example. Thinking about it in that way. So, yeah,
Definitely.
Chandice, what do you think?
And I think the interesting part of that story is that it wasn't just that we met at Expo West, we met through a connection. This is exactly what happens at Tastemaker. People always tell us we love conferences, but there's something different about the way that Tastemaker feels. And that is our greatest compliment that anyone could ever give us. Our community genuinely cares about success of each other. There's a huge abundance mentality versus scarcity mentality. If someone knows something, they're sharing it, including our speakers. Like, for example, Molly, who taught on email, she's, here's what I did. Take it and do it. We want you to succeed. And Alyssa and Holly, who taught, they gave it was literally called the blueprint to the money that they've made. And I know that took them hundreds of hours to prepare because they are extreme experts. But I feel like that's why it is successful. And so when we met at Expo West, it was because I knew Erin from Meaningful Eats and she knew Erin from Meaningful Eats. And she said, I just have a feeling you two need to meet. And those are the kind of people that are at Tastemaker, where that didn't benefit her at all in any way, but it was just making connections with people who it seems like they need to be connected. And so to me, that goes into one of the other huge benefits of Tastemaker is the sponsorship networking that we have.
Yeah.
And so we vet our sponsors. They were like, do you have money to invest? Is this something that you understand influencer marketing and you're ready to put into it? And a lot of times if they're like, we barely have enough to be there, so we probably wouldn't have enough to invest in the creators, then we're like, I would say probably wait a year then, because these creators do need to be paid for their work. And so a lot of times people meet, they get those sponsorship deals, those brand collaborations, and even long-term business besties. We've seen that where we saw a gal who was one of the bridesmaids at her friend's wedding because they met at one of the first Tastemakers and now they're best friends. So of course that's wonderful, but we've seen the money come back time and again simply from one partnership. One partnership, even a quarter of a partnership would pay back your ticket with those brands. So we love seeing that and it usually happens.
And I appreciate that all the feedback that you get, you genuinely take it to heart and try to make it a better experience each and every year. And I know you talked about some of your sponsors, but how do you go about deciding who's going to be a speaker and how the topics are going to evolve? How does that all play play in?
So we're a very small team. There's four of us, but Leslie and I do work really closely on the programming. And then, of course, everything is funneled through the whole team. Does everyone like this? Does everyone feel like this is good? I feel like because I'm actively involved in my blog, I have a bit of a touch on what is happening right this second because it's affecting my ad money, my Pinterest account. I'm sitting here every day updating posts and trying to do stuff too, as much as possible. So then on the other side, we go through our surveys from the year before and we dissect those completely. Who did they love? Who do they want to hear from again? And we try not to bring back the same speakers, but also what topics were really important to them? Did they learn the most from? And then we've done the 301 and 701 lines where it's intermediate, beginner, and advanced. And we've added in the labs. Because one thing from last year that everyone said is, okay, stop doing a 50-minute class for those deep dive ones because we just get into it and then it's over. This year, one of the things that we're doing differently is those long classes, they're going to be an hour and 50 minutes where they're just together. So you don't have to come back the next day and, okay, let's repeat a little bit of what we learned yesterday. That's frustrating. And we love hearing those things. And so those surveys, you think when you get the survey in your email, like, but it really does matter to us. And then also DEI is very important to us. We always have a goal to make sure that everyone's represented at Tastemaker. Everyone feels seen and heard. And that's also a huge compliment when people are like, I'm so grateful that I wasn't the only one who looked like me at the conference, both on the stage and in the community.
And I think just to add to what Chandice is saying about the feedback, those surveys are important, like she's saying. And for those research nerds out there, it's like you need a certain data sample amount for it to be reliable and significant. And so it's been interesting to see as our conferences grow, because like I mentioned, our first conference was 150 people back in 2018, and we're planning for 700 this year in 2026. We hit that number this last year in January in Vegas. And so I think that helps us too, right? The larger it gets, the better sample we have. We can get really targeted information. And we're also just trying to be better about surveying along the way. And we also have a board that I know we haven't done a ton of marketing about. We do it at the conference to say, hey, thanks to the board, but really starting to socialize that we aren't just making these decisions between the four of us. And to Chandice's point, she is more actively working on her blog than I am. I still make ad revenue from mine and check in on it every once in a while. So I understand the overall needs, but I'm not in the daily touch points. Like she was saying, I'm spending more of my efforts on like high level business development and things like that, which is also important. And I think that's the interesting thing about Tastemaker is because we are small enough, but we all are very well aligned and efficient in our zones of genius between our four core team members. We call ourselves the core four. But the board is really helpful, right? Because it consists of some of these business owners that, Andrew from Nerd Press, Haley from Kit. Then we have other bloggers from all different walks of life. And that is really important. We've been leaning on that, surveying them, being like, does this make sense based on what you're seeing? Because we want to make sure we're hitting all the touch points of every part of a food creator's business.
I was just gonna say my favorite thing with Abbey is when any of us on the team say anything like, for example, we were talking about there's a small percentage of people who don't come, who bought a ticket but are not able to come. And we were guessing that percentage and Abby's like, where's the data to show exactly what that percentage is?
Yeah. I'm like, go give me the median from the last 3 years and then we will determine our decisions off of that percentage. 8.4%.
I love that. But I think that's what makes your whole system, for lack of a better word, work. That it's almost like it's an organism that is just working in tandem with all these other things. And I appreciate that you have a board that can bring in perspectives, like email perspectives, techie perspectives that, yes, as creators, you see a little bit of that, like how it affects your business, but you can't necessarily see how it affects everyone else's business. So it's nice to have objective opinions to just give you a little bit more information to make more informed decisions for everybody. And you have all of these data points now to go, okay, seems like we're doing this really well. Let's keep on keeping on here. But then over here, it seems like we've got a bit of a gap that we just didn't even realize we had. So now how do we fill that gap? Obviously, connection, collaboration, that is so huge. Are there a lot of other brands and people that come just to collaborate? Like, how does that all look?
So I'm just going to give you the numbers breakdown because that's how I see things in my brain. Chandice will give you more of the qualitative storytelling about these people.
I love it.
Because we just went through all these numbers. It's like, how many speakers do we have? How many sponsors are there? And then how many actual like creator blogger attendees are there? And so we usually see about 100 brand sponsors. And so that would be their entire teams. Our team and volunteers is about 10. And then our speakers anywhere from 30 to 40 people, depending on our panels and how we structure our tracks for the year. So
And many of those speakers are also full-time creators.
yeah. And I would say even the sponsors, some of
Mhm.
them also still have like blogs and things, but they are so intertwined with the community. So
Yes.
looking at that 700, about 150 people are going to be the speakers, the brands, and our team. So that still leaves 550 people. And again, it comes to this point of it's this very well-rounded mix. But of that 550, we're seeing, what is it, Chandice? About 80 to 85% are like a high level advanced.
They're high enough that they're on with an ad
Mhm.
network, so their traffic meets those thresholds.
And then I would say of that remaining 20%, at this point, it's only probably about 5 to 10% of people who are brand new, have never touched a blog and just want to be there. Because honestly, like since we are unpacking this and just speaking transparently, there was this narrative going around for a while that Tastemaker is for new bloggers. And I think that was a reasonable piece of feedback because our content was geared more towards that because a lot of the people that were coming, that percentage was higher. I would say it was more like the 30%. And so because we changed our programming to be more aligned, because we listened to that feedback, and as we developed our relationships with people, and naturally through the years, those who are beginners are
Yes,
now
exactly.
becoming experts, which to us
Yes.
was like, we're all growing together. And so it's just a beautiful mix of all the right people that need to be in the room. And I think that's also another huge part of why it is such a huge return on your investment. You get access to that. So, Chandice, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
It's been really fun the last 2 years to see some of those mega bloggers come back because they finally feel like they have a place to A, learn and B, connect. This can be a very isolating job. And so to just even come for that purpose, it's been fun to watch. And I feel like a lot of them are like, we know most of this, but they're still going away with something, which is why we're having those high level executive classes at the 701 level, where they're learning from their fellow colleague who's really doing an amazing job at something. And they're like, wow, I've been around for 12 years, but I still didn't realize what's changing with email. Wow, I'm so glad I went to that class. So that's been really fun to see. And also because I've heard from some of the newer bloggers where they're like, oh my gosh, this person is here. I love them. I've loved their work. They've been so incredible. And so it's been fun to see that interaction as well, where they're so available. They're right there and they can talk, they can ask questions. And we've seen those interactions. And that has been really fun to watch as well.
It sounds like you have developed community, which is the goal, right? And this is something that you hear too. With blogging, it's dog eat dog. You got to look out for number one. And one thing that I love and that I have seen, and I wish more people could see, is how wonderful the food blogging community is. That's why I started specializing in website design for food bloggers, because so many people are willing to share, collaborate, and be part of the conversation if you're willing to have the conversations, which is, again, where this podcast even started. It was like, let's pull up to the table, let's just talk to each other and open the doors and let people see how amazing it is at the table.
Absolutely. I definitely think that's been a huge part of our community. And so you're there for the community, you're there for the education. And going back to that, we've seen a lot of creators with just one strategy that they implemented at Tastemaker pay for their ticket. And so that's been really fun too, because if you also think about it, what other place do you have face-to-face interaction with your ad network? There's really not.
You just don't.
And unless you're at the luminary or like the higher levels of those ad networks, you also don't have a dedicated person. You probably have access to your ad network and they're doing a good job talking to you. But like Abby said, they can just sit down in just a few seconds and help you increase your RPM by $3. And you know what? That's going to go a long way.
Yeah. That's huge over time. That compounding number is amazing.
Yeah, James loves, he's the one for Raptive, and then Jenny for Mediavine. They love to sit down and just do that and play with things and help you so that you can leave and go, yay, my RPM is up by $2 or $3 just from a few little tweaks. Being in person and talking back and forth is something really different. And then also the other sponsors, most of them are there because they are looking to build their creator marketing team, and they're wanting to meet you in person because they can see what you do online, but they want to know that your personality and your energy aligns with their work. And
Yes.
so that's been really fun because the community is also built with partnerships in a very organic way.
That's so amazing. I know I'm like, wow, can we say amazing or wonderful? Like, how many times can I say it different way?
Right.
Fantastic. I don't know. I've run out of adjectives to describe.
Spectacular.
We love it.
Spectacular. That's a good one. You all are true advocates for the food blogging community. And I appreciate that so much because we need advocates. Right now can be a scary time for a lot of creators because you're seeing, oh, this isn't working anymore. Oh, this has changed. And really over the last couple of years, there's been so many changes with some of these bigger platforms. And I think being able to go to people and say, is anybody else having this problem or is it just me? And knowing, oh, okay, it's not just me having this problem. This is something we're seeing across the board. And we have both struggled, but we're going to keep on keeping on and having those people alongside you that you can connect with in real time, in real life, and then be able to move forward. And you were talking about those people that when you first started with Tastemaker, they were at more beginner, maybe entering that intermediate area, but now they're the experts. So it's this full circle moment where they're coming back. Now, do you have that happen where these people are now experts that were some of your first visitors and those that started with you?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of our retention, we have like tastemaker lifers that have been there from
I
day
love
one.
that.
The person that comes to my mind, and for those of you who know Rebecca from Devour Dinner, I believe it's Rebecca Johnson. I honestly look forward to seeing everybody at our conferences, but she's been there from day one, at least 2019, but I want to say it was
Wow.
2018. And every year she comes up and gives me a hug and is, I'm so proud of you guys. It's so fun to see this because she was somebody who was brand new and started out. And now these people are becoming friends. Like I see her with her best buds that I believe she met at Tastemaker. She now, I think, has 2 websites. They're both on with ad networks. She's making a full-time living, which 7 years ago, it was like, oh, this sounds like a cool thing to do. And I think
Yeah.
that's why we started it, right? We also want to give people the ability to be their own boss, and you get to take control over your life, your time freedom, your finances, just all the resources that provide you that freedom across the board. Because when it comes down to it, life is about relationships, and we want to help people create lives that improve their overall quality of life. And like, what better way to do that than with food? Because the content we're also helping people create brings people together. So I think that's why there's this overall beautiful feeling of community. And I don't want to backtrack totally, but as you were talking about this advocacy piece, Jen, I wanted to point out it's not in our 3 core brand values here that you can see, but legitimacy and advocacy have almost become this 4th pillar that we're working on. I have been working on my master's degree and my thesis on the politics of the creator economy, which is this larger piece, right, that is happening in the world. And it is a very real part of our economy, and understanding what does that mean as an implication for society? How are we legitimizing this space for food creators, but creators across the board? Because I do think there is still some stigma, not as bad as it once was, but that's, oh, you want to be an influencer when you grow up. And it's, what's the difference between influencer and creator? And we could get off a tangent on that, which that's not for today. That I think that is so important that we are here teaching people, showing you that this is a viable pathway to a really lucrative career, just as I used that example with Rebecca. And I think that's really important that we exist to show that the creator economy is here to stay. So we are trying to keep a pulse on like what is impacting creators right now. What is the long-term vision? What are your pain points? Instead of it just happening at the conference, but how can we be providing you that sense of education and community year round?
I was going to say, if she didn't tell you about her education, I was going to, because it always amazes me so much. I think it's just incredible what she's doing. And one of the things we always talk about right now feels scary. It feels scary. There's this and there's SEO and there's all these things happening. But we actually talked as a team the other day and we were like, remember in 2019 in Portland when we had a whole session on diversifying your income? Because guess what? It was scary then too. And so I think
It
it's a
is.
reminder that it's always changing. It's always always a little volatile where we just don't know. And it's because, just like Abby said, we're building something that is newer and we're legitimizing it. And so every year there's something that is telling us, oh, this is scary this year. SEO was scary 2 years ago. And then this has been scary. There's all kinds of things that are changing. And so I think always coming back to remembering how important it is to not put all your eggs in one basket, making sure that you truly are remembering to diversify and work your email list. That's going to be the thing that you own. Whenever I
Yes.
need a boost on my blog and I'm like, this post needs a boost, I'm like, email, it's going out in email
Exactly. Yes.
because those are my people. They care. And it's funny because Google will not say that, yes, it impacts, but we've seen it like anecdotally, we've seen it all around, all of us creators, that when you have a viral post or a post that's doing really well on social, it goes up in the Google ranking. And they're like, they stand by, no, don't. And we're like, yes, it does matter. And
Right.
so you have to push it on social. You have to send it to your email. But those are all the different ways that you can get paid too. So when one has a slump and you get hit by the March
Exactly.
update and you're like, come on, you can go, okay, guess it's time to go over here and do this. And that includes brand partnerships. I think for a while people were like, it's a lot of work to do brand partnerships. It's a lot, especially if you have someone who is dictating every move you make. But the
Right.
partnerships that are right are the ones where they let you creatively showcase your talents and abilities, and they're just to guide you. And so I think that we're coming back and we're seeing even big bloggers doing brand partnerships again, which for a minute we didn't because everyone was killing it with their ad revenue and everyone was home baking. And now they're like, all right, I need to pick those partnerships back up because I do need that income. So I think it's important to remember that.
And to wrap that into then, how does Tastemaker help you with that? We have really been investing in education for brands this year. That's a new initiative because we are uniquely positioned to be working with them in what we offer. Leslie from our team had the genius idea to start this, so I want to give her the credit where that's due. But like I said, Chandice is really the lead on those sponsors and those brand partnerships on our end of Tastemaker. And so we are trying to cultivate all the diverse ways that you can make money. It's not just like this one-stop shop of do it this way. We have a pulse on what's trendy and what's relevant, but we have tried really hard to make sure that we don't put our eggs in one basket in terms of what we are educating and promoting. So I think that's been really helpful.
My gosh, I love all of that. And I have all these ideas while y'all are sitting there talking. And then I get to the end of it and I'm just like, I just want to be like, wow, this is so great. And then I'm like, wait, I lost my train of thought because it's just so good. And I'm just like in the moment listening to everything. But again, I think the fact that you all are educating brands too circles right back to advocacy. You are advocating for the people who are not just your attendees, but just food bloggers at large. You're advocating for them whether they know it or not. And circling back to what you were saying, Chandice, about it was all ad revenue for a minute. Now people are like, maybe I'm going to dip my toe back in the brand partnerships. But that is actually just the kind of evolution of a business is really pivoting when you need to and determining, okay, if I'm not putting all my eggs in one basket and I am looking at the data, Abby, you're all about the data. If I'm looking at all the data and I'm seeing, okay, if I've got a drop here, then I can do this thing, whether it's email my list or whatever to pick up over here. 1 minute, your ad revenue is going to be through the roof. Fourth quarter, can we say amen to that? It's like fourth quarter. Yes, let's go. Because we know first quarter's coming and first quarter's like, bleh. It's usually not great for ad revenue. So I know lock down some brand partnerships for first quarter, thinking holistically. And ultimately, isn't that going back to ROI? It's learning these things and then applying, which is why I love that you have the lecture and labs. Not only are people learning and taking all the notes, absorbing all the information, but then they're able to turn it into a real application right there on site before they get home and they forgot what they learned. So can you explain how those labs work? Not to get too much into the granular stuff, but I think that's an unsung hero that we don't talk about a lot.
Yeah, I just want to point out to, again, the small but mighty Tastemaker team of Everybody's Zone of Genius. Daphne has her master's degree in education. So she was a teacher before this, and she went through a course specializing in adult learning. And that's where this came from, right? The feedback of, okay, how can we categorize this? How can we have this make sense? And me being the academic nerd that I am, can we structure this like a college course? And we work through that as a team, but then have having her come in and say, hey, how do adult learners learn best? We had multiple conversations around that. The research overwhelmingly indicates adults need to apply it and actually do it. So that is, first of all, like how we came to this through the research and through the feedback. But I think the idea being that we try to solidify the classes where you need tactile help of here's the strategy and then here are the tactics to make sure you do that. It's hard skills versus soft skills. And I think the soft skills are the ones where it can be like a shorter class or a panel or a keynote, but those really hard skills, I need to dive into my analytics. I need to go through financial audits or whatever the thing may be that's super hard. That's how we have decided what would make sense in a lecture lab place. But Chandice, I know you have insight into that because you are the one that helps finalize what are we going to teach about and why.
Yeah, one of the feedback that we got, which I actually loved that it came in the survey because I felt the same way, was that not every class needs a lab and that 50 minutes is good for this class. We really don't need an hour and 50 minutes. So last year we really focused on everything had a lab. This year it's going to be some classes have a lab and some do not, which I think people are going to love because last year I think there was 8 classes available total that you could attend, which you couldn't attend all of them, but we always give a replay to our attendees as well. And so the nice thing is with this year, I think there's 12 classes that you could possibly enjoy. And of course, not the whole time in person, but then you'll have more to come home and learn. And along those lines, our job is to provide education, be the one-stop platform for education for food content creators and brands that work with food content creators all year long. So we see you at January and we work hard and we learn, but then we don't wait till next January to see you. We're doing monthly webinars that are, like Abby said, very tactile skills. We are getting in the weeds. Your computer is out and you're doing the work with us. And we're very strict about those webinars. Tastemaker Talk is for all the fun and more like what's happening right this moment, but that doesn't require you to get on your computer and do the work. The webinars are you come and you have ongoing continuing education every month with Tastemaker. And we have upcoming, we're going to be doing one with Kit and Molly again, because she taught you that stuff, but do you really want to wait till next January to know what she's learned since then? I don't. I want Molly and Kit to tell me what new has come out in email that we need to know before next January. Same thing, we just had Andrew on, and I know this isn't a sexy topic, but it is important. And it was about our website security. And as talking, you're updating things on your website going, oh, I need to do that. I forgot to do that. This is important. And so that's our ongoing education. That's something that's very important, is that it's continuing.
And I think even those topics that aren't the sexy topics, they're the ones that, let's be honest, the sexy ones we could do all day by ourselves. It's the one that security. I don't really want to have to go into my plugins, but if you know everybody else is doing it too, you're like, fine, I'll go ahead and do it because we're all doing it together. We're all suffering together. So at least if we have to do this not fun stuff, we can do it together. And I think there's solidarity in knowing that others are suffering too. It sounds terrible, but we got to do these hard things.
I like that as like a marketing pitch. Be like, come to this webinar so we can do these hard things together. As Chandice and I like to say, we want to do the fun stuff, not the dumb stuff. But
it's so true though. It's like, I would so much rather not go get a root canal, but if I know you're going to, it's at least we're going to suffer together and we can laugh as we cry. It's really fun. But isn't that just business in general? It just seems like that as we're talking about business, ROI, Tastemaker, all the things, I think it comes full circle to say that return on investment, first of all, not just financial, which is the immediate place our brain goes, oh, if I spend $600, I want to make $600 plus. That's the initial concept that most people think of. But you said it, there's time, there's energy, there's all these other things. And I appreciate that the experts that you call in are those that have their finger on the pulse of what's happening, what's trending right now, because again, it changes. What might have been relevant 6 months ago is no longer relevant because something has changed entirely. And so making sure that you have people that are coming in that are constantly having conversations about what is relevant, but then also deeper conversations about how to get better at your craft, because none of us have ever arrived. I don't care if you're the leader in one area, there's always something you can do better. And I was even thinking back to the conversation about the people who started that were beginners and then now they're experts. I don't care how expert you are, you can always make room to learn something more, even if it's just from a more efficient standpoint and be more efficient in your processes. And I thought about where you said ad revenue and then those who are looking at brand partnerships. I guarantee you, even if you did brand partnerships at the beginning of your journey and you're 5 years down the road and now you're re-establishing some brand partnerships or sponsorships, so your whole approach to it is going to be different than it was when you began. And so much of that is the experience and the education that you've gained through all of that. So is there anything else that you all want to share about Tastemaker that we haven't covered? I could obviously sit on here for days, but people are probably like, I have other things to do. I have children to pick up.
I was just going to say, isn't it interesting? Because if I could go back to those first partnerships I did and be like, can I have a redo? I'd love a redo. Because you've learned so much. But also I thought about what you said about you've never fully arrived. And I had a friend who's just amazing and would be viewed as the top, right? And she said, there's something to be said for the pressure to remain on top. And she said it so humbly and so kindly and just with all the humility that I was like, I didn't even think about that pressure.
No.
Didn't
Wow.
think about that pressure. And so there's a whole category of creators that are deeply pressured to maintain that status as well and to maintain the revenue that they've brought in and things like that because now they have people's livelihoods that count on it.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought that's pretty incredible. So when you said that, you've never fully arrived, but one thing I love to remind people is there's also something to be said for enough. There's a place of this is enough for me. I had one of my food creator friends who I love. She said, I just really like to make 250,000 a year. And I realized that is a big number. That's a lot of money. I know that. But she said, I really don't need more than that. My family and I don't need more than that. That's enough. And I thought, I love that. She knows what she wants and what she needs. Because what happens is sometimes when you hit that goal, then you're like, but I could do more. I could go higher.
Exactly.
In this chasing. But if yourself that earned $10,000 in a year could see where you're at now, wouldn't they be so proud? And so I think stopping and taking the moments to give yourself a congratulatory big clap and hug and say, look how far you've come. And also know when enough is enough because there's something to be said, like Abby said, return on time, return on experience. It's the same thing with life. Do you really want your return on experience of life and your return on time of life? At some point, money is not worth this.
I agree.
And so you have to decide, and that looks different for everybody. But I just thought when they said those two things, those were some of the most powerful things I've heard from other creators.
I agree.
That's beautiful. I would just like to add that Tastemaker is for everyone. And I want to make sure that we started it that way because I believe in the deepest part of my soul that there is something to learn from everyone. And to Chandice's point, because it's not all about your level of success and how much money you make and your titles and those elements of our social currency that I think we hold on to and are so precious because every person that's been in that room, whether they came on an equity ticket or the top tier blogger that is super famous, there is something to be learned from. I've had conversations with everybody from every different walk of life and have learned so much from each of them. And so I think that is the biggest thing. And that's the magic of Tastemaker.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Food Bloggers Table. I'm your host, Jennifer Holt, and I look forward to serving you in the next episode.